Welcome back to Decode Station. I'm Sarah. Today we are opening a file that literally glows in the dark. It's the story of the Radium Girls. Joining me today to decode the biological betrayal is forensic specialist Dr. Marcus.
It's a tragedy that exemplifies what happens when physics, which is, immutable, is sacrificed for human profit. It's a story that absolutely needs to be told.
We should probably start with this incredibly simple yet just horrifying image. We're talking about young women, mostly in the early 20th century. They're painting watches for soldiers.
Right, for World War I,
Yeah.
a crucial piece of equipment.
And they were told this undark paint was a miracle substance. The instructions they were given for accuracy were just brutal. Lick the brush, dip it in the paint, and apply. So for our listener, was there any realistic way these workers could have known the danger they were literally putting in their mouths?
None. None whatsoever. And that right there is the central deception we need to decode. The tragedy isn't just that they were exposed.
It's that it didn't have to happen.
It was entirely preventable. These young women were actively encouraged to use the lip dip and paint technique to get that fine point on the brush.
And at the same time.
Meanwhile, we know, the sources are clear on this, the USRC executives and the company chemists, the scientists handling the exact same material in their labs, they were using lead screens, thick rubber gloves, long tongs.
So they knew.
They absolutely knew the danger.
And they concealed it.
It immediately changes this from a story of maybe early scientific ignorance to a clear case of malice, corporate greed. So let's unpack that initial lie.
Yeah.
The company at the center of this was the United States Radium Corporation, the USRC. What were they selling?
Well, they were selling a product that really captured the imagination of the era. The paint, which they marketed as Undark, was a mix of adhesives, zinc sulfide, and the critical ingredient, radium salts.
And radium glows.
Intensely. So you had a product that made watch dials and instrument gauges glow without any external light. For a soldier in a dark trench or a pilot in a cockpit at night, this was genuinely revolutionary technology. And the public was fascinated by this stuff, right? After Marie Curie's discoveries, radioactivity was seen as modern, beneficial, almost magical. They were putting it in toothpaste, cosmetics.
Absolutely. There was
That would kill.
this cultural delusion that radioactivity equaled vitality.
Yeah.
And the USRC leaned into that delusion hard. They set up these factory-like environments where young women, often teenagers, were hired for piecework, just painting these tiny numbers hour after hour.
And that procedure, that deadly rhythm of lip dip paint, that was enforced because it was fast. It was efficient.
It increased productivity. It was a trade-off, really,
Speed.
for safety. But it was worse than that. The USRC went further. When workers started sensing something was wrong, maybe they noticed their lips and teeth glowed in the dark, and they asked about safety, well, the deception became active. It became criminal.
The sources confirm the managers didn't just dismiss their concerns, they lied.
They did. They told these young, vulnerable women that ingesting a little radium was harmless. They actually said it would rosy their cheeks and make them more beautiful.
Unbelievable.
Just imagine that level of conscious betrayal. You are knowingly instructing someone to ingest a deadly poison while telling them it'll make them prettier. The incentive was purely financial. Radium was expensive, so wasting paint was costly. Using their lips was the cheapest way to get a perfect brush point.
That intentional lie really sets the stage for the scientific horror that followed. So let's move from the corporate office into the human body. How did this substance, which the public thought was a health cure, become such a lethal, concentrated poison?
Okay, so this is where we transition from human malice to just cold, hard chemical reality. The fundamental scientific mechanism here is what we call calcium mimicry.
Let's break that down. What is the body mistaking radium for?
The body cannot chemically tell the difference between a radium atom and a calcium atom. They're in the same column on the periodic table. They're alkaline earth metals, their ionic charge, their size. It's all so similar that the body's own systems just treat them identically.
And calcium is what our body uses to build our skeleton.
Right. So the body, in its attempt to strengthen its own architecture, actively pulls this radioactive material out of the bloodstream.
And puts it where?
It deposits it directly into the bones, into the bone matrix. This makes the exposure permanent, relentless. Unlike a chemical toxin that might get flushed out, radium's half-life is 1,600 years. Once it's in your skeleton, it is not leaving.
That context is chilling. The poison is permanently installed in the very structure meant to protect you. So what kind of damage is it doing once it's locked inside the bone?
Well, once it's embedded, The radium begins its radioactive decay. It starts breaking down, and as it does, it emits these energetic particles. The main one we're concerned with here is the alpha particle.
And this is where the physics gets really crucial because externally, alpha particles aren't that dangerous, are they?
That's right. They're heavy, they have 2 protons, 2 neutrons, a powerful charge, but they have very low penetrating power. A single sheet of paper, even the layer of dead skin on your hand, is enough to stop an alpha particle. Outside the body, they're almost harmless.
But inside the body.
Inside the body, there's no shield. The source material uses this vivid metaphor and become microscopic cannonballs. When released inside the bone, they only travel a tiny distance, but in that short distance, they cause devastating damage. They smash through cell membranes, they sever DNA strands. It's relentless, localized radiation damage.
Yeah.
24 hours a day, year after year.
The result was just catastrophic destruction of the skeletal system. And the sources all document this one specific horrific symptom that became central to their case, radium jaw.
Radium jaw, or severe osteonecrosis, is the result of that intense localized irradiation.
Right.
The jawbone, because it has rapid cell turnover and it's subject to microtrauma from things like dental work, was often the first structure to just fail.
What does that actually look like clinically? We need to understand the true human cost here.
It was unimaginably horrific. The bone itself became necrotic. It was literally dying from the inside out. There are accounts of women who can press on their jaw and just feel the bone crumble. Teeth would spontaneously fall out. Simple tooth extractions would leave these wounds that never healed because the tissue was too irradiated to repair itself.
So their skeletons were dissolving while they were still alive.
Essentially, yes. All while the USRC insisted they were just suffering from some vague, unrelated ailments.
Which brings us back to the corporate response. When these young women started to get sick and die, the USRC didn't apologize. They didn't offer help. They launched an active cover-up campaign. This is so far beyond negligence.
It absolutely is. When the first deaths occurred, when the first lawsuits were threatened, the corporation mobilized everything, not to find a cure, but to eliminate their liability.
And how far did they go? Did they tamper with scientific data?
Oh, they went to great lengths. The records show the company hired specific scientists, people with high academic credentials, whose main job was to produce fake reports. These reports were designed to claim one of two things. Either that the women were perfectly healthy, or that their severe illnesses, the bone decay, the anemia, the cancers, were completely unrelated to their work.
They were using the authority of science itself to silence the victims. But the most heinous act, the thing that shows the real depth of their corruption, was the smear campaign.
That's the detail that is still so shocking. To proactively destroy the reputations of the people they had poisoned. That's malice. When the lawsuits became unavoidable, the USRC started trying to blame the women's deaths on syphilis.
Syphilis. Why that specifically?
It was a perfect tool for libel at the time. First, advanced syphilis can cause skeletal decay, so it provided a plausible, though medically false, counter-narrative.
Yeah.
But secondly, and more strategically, it allowed them to completely destroy the women's reputations.
It turned them from victims into outcasts.
Precisely. By suggesting they were suffering from a sexually transmitted disease, the USRC could discredit their character, undermine their credibility, and make sure they were socially ostracized. The strategy was to make the women so ashamed that their lawsuits would just crumble.
Poison the body, then poison the memory. It's a double betrayal. And yet, despite everything, the illness, the stigma, a wealthy corporation fighting them, the Radium girls, women like Grace Fryer, they refused to back down. They sued.
And their legal fight was monumental because the law simply wasn't designed for this. They had to deal with deliberate delays from the USRC's lawyers who were, they were literally trying to wait for the women to die so the case would disappear.
The system was built for an immediate injury, right? A machine accident. Not for a slow, invisible poisoning that takes years to manifest. How did their victory force the system to evolve?
Their fight established a critical new legal precedent, the recognition of long-term occupational hazard liability. Before their case, it was almost impossible to sue an employer for an illness that showed up years later. The Radium girls proved intentional negligence. They successfully linked a latent disease to a workplace environment.
And what was the lasting institutional legacy that grew directly out of that struggle?
It was the foundation for our entire modern worker safety framework. Their case provided the horrifying, tangible proof that was needed to fundamentally change labor laws. That evidence and that legal recognition of long-term risk led directly to the eventual creation of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA.
The agency that sets and enforces workplace safety standards today exists because of what these women endured.
It ensures that employers have to recognize and mitigate hazards, document exposure, and provide protective equipment, instead of just lying to their employees and hoping the law is too slow to catch up. Their courage codified the idea that profit cannot justify sacrificing human health.
So, if you're listening, the relevance today is everywhere in toxicology, in labor law. This case is this painful intersection of physics, science, and corporate greed. The knowledge we gained from it is applied every single day. It showed the profound consequences of prioritizing profit over the immutable laws of nature.
And it's a powerful cautionary tale. When powerful people assure you that something that glows in the dark is good for you, you always have to look for the lid tongs they're using behind the curtain.
Their bones are still glowing in their graves today. The case is decoded. I'm Sarah, and this is Decode Station.